Hey. Hey. Hey there. My name, Hi, and welcome to this new thing that we're about to start. My name is Josh, and I am a homeschooled high school graduate, currently on a gap year before attending Harvard in the fall of 2022. And I had this idea going into the beginning of my gap year to start a YouTube channel to fill a gap, to fill a void in the homeschooling community that I really think needs filling. The idea I had was to put together a series of videos to walk students and parents through a number of different things that one can struggle with while trying to figure out how to navigate high school in a non-traditional way. And so having done that myself in what I would consider to be a fairly successful way, I figured I had some interesting stuff to share that might actually be helpful for some other people. And so to kick things off, I think it makes sense to talk about one of the biggest parts of homeschooling through high school, course selection. So when thinking about course selection, there really are 5 things you need to be thinking about. I refer to them as the big 5, and they are the subjects. So you've got math, history, English, foreign language, and science. And then it's like 5 plus 1, and that 1 can be a ton of different things. That's going to be all your electives. So the cool thing about homeschooling, or just being non-traditional in general, is that the way that you can fill those big 5 are really limitless. So just as an example, I needed to get a history credit for sophomore year. And so what did I decide to do? I decided to take a history of jazz and American popular music at my community college, and it was awesome. So that's just like one example of how you can be flexible with what courses you're taking. And so even though you have those 5 buckets that you have to fill every year, you are able to do them in creative ways. So diving into those different ways that you can fill those different requirements, you have a whole bunch of options. The option that I am most fond of personally, and that I have the most experience with, is community college. And so community college, for me, was a phenomenal resource in high school. And I think it is for a lot of homeschooled or non-traditional students. Community college really offers students a plethora of class options, and also just a network of students who are a bit farther ahead in the educational process, students who have already graduated high school and are pursuing further education. And so being in that environment is really beneficial as a young high school student because it just gives you something to strive for. Community college as a non-traditional student can be a bit tricky to navigate at times because the issue is that most community college advisors don't actually know how to deal with non-traditional students. Most community college advisors and faculty are accustomed to having students who graduate high school and then are going to do their 2 years at community college and are then going to transfer to a 4-year university, and that's that. That is not your goal as a non-traditional student. What you're trying to do most of the time as a non-traditional student is take everything that you can from the community college, all of your learning, all of your connections, all of your extracurriculars, and you're trying to take that, use it as high school, and then apply to 4-year universities as a freshman. That's what I did. That's not always what you have to do. You can go the route of taking community college classes in high school, getting your associates, and then just transferring to a 4-year university. Like for me, that would have been ASU since I did high school in Arizona. And so I would have finished high school with an associate's degree and then just transferred to ASU And I would have started at ASU as a junior and been done with college at like 20. And so that was kind of the fallback plan, had I not gotten into the schools that I was hoping to get into. And like, nothing wrong with that. It would have been an awesome opportunity. Many state colleges have honors programs within them. So at ASU, that's Barrett, the honors college. And Barrett is phenomenal. But so, there's also honors colleges at pretty much all state universities. And so if you are a high achieving student looking for a rigorous academic experience in a more intimate setting than a 40,000 person university like ASU, the honors college can be a phenomenal option. And so community college can also be a stepping stone to that honors college, which is really great. In terms of actually navigating community college and picking courses, the best way to think about this is in terms of fulfilling your core 5. So when I started at community college, I actually started off just taking one class, and that was my freshman year of high school. And so I started with just English 101 for the first semester, and then I started with English 102 for the second semester. And that worked out really great because taking those 2 classes, I was able to knock out prerequisites for most other courses in the community college system. English 101 and 102 are classes that you'll want to get out of the way pretty much immediately. And so if you can knock those out freshman year or sophomore year, you should. Once you have those 2 classes out of the way, the sky is really the limit with where you can go. And so it's important at that point to really look into who your resources at the community college can be. For me, this ended up largely being the honors program at the community college that I went to, Paradise Valley Community College. The honors program was great because they were able to bypass a lot of the rules that the advisors felt that they needed to follow. So, for example, when I wanted to go register for courses, I didn't even bother going to the registrar. I went to the Honors Center, and the people in the Honors Center would help me with that because they understood my goals, they understood my circumstances, and they were willing to help. So maybe it won't be your Honors Center at your community college, but you'll want to find 1 or 2 or 3 people who are able to help you, who are in your corner and who can help guide you through the process and just help you step around some of the bureaucracy that exists within the community college systems. One other important part about taking community college classes is having the ability to think a bit ahead in terms of course selection. So if you're able to think, I may want to take this set of classes next semester or in 2 semesters, then you'll be able to figure out which classes you need to take to get there. It can be a little bit tricky at times doing that planning ahead, but it's really important because community college, unlike some of these other course providers that we'll talk about, actually does have a set progression to it most of the time. There are some ways you can get around that by testing out of certain things, but generally speaking, you'll want to progress through the system as is more typical. And so to do that, you'll need to just plan ahead a bit. And that's potentially where a traditional community college advisor could come into play. One last thing I'll say about the community college before we move on is that community college classes count as 1 year's worth of high school credit. By taking 1 semester at the community college in a particular subject, that traditionally counts for a year's worth of high school learning. So that's how in high school I was able to get through like 6 or 7 years worth of high school math by taking stuff at the community college. So just keep that in mind when you're planning on fulfilling your big 5 courses for a given academic year. You don't actually have to take 5 courses, 1 in each subject, for the entire year. If you're doing community college stuff, and it's the same case with AP classes, if you're doing community college or AP, then that coursework will count as a full year's worth of class even though it's one semester. So moving on from community college, the next course provider bucket that we have is online classes. And online classes can be a great resource, especially depending on what type of learner you are. If you enjoy more distanced learning and you've taken classes in an online format before, then continuing with that is kind of a no-brainer because there are lots of great online course providers. To list some of the ones that I used throughout high school, I took Spanish at the Potter School, which has phenomenal language programs. Caveat about the Potter School is that it is very religious, it's Christian. And so for a subject like Spanish, that wasn't an issue at all. Would I take biology there? Probably not. But that doesn't discredit their quality of teaching and what I learned there in Spanish. So just because a particular school or course provider may have a religious affiliation doesn't mean that their service is not valuable. It really can be. You have a course provider called Online G3, which is one of my favorites. The classes are taught in a very fun and playful way. It's more of a course provider probably for freshman and sophomore year rather than junior and senior year, but they can also be really great. Throughout high school, those were three of my favorites, but being a type of learner who really prefers to be in person, I really, as soon as I could, transitioned pretty much all of my classes to the community college. That's how I ended up with more than half of my high school classes taken at the community college, and it just worked really well for me. If you'd like more resources, I'll be linking a whole bunch of online course providers down in the description, so feel free to check those out. Beyond online course providers, another favorite of mine is co-ops. Co-ops can fill a really important gap in a homeschooled education, which is just connecting with students who are your age. Throughout high school, most of my friends were much older than me, friends from academic settings anyway. And so homeschooled co-ops give you the opportunity to A, take courses from interesting people who may not be teachers in a traditional sense, but are educators nonetheless. And so that can be really valuable. They also give you the opportunity to make friends with people who are your age and connect with other people in your community, which can be great. It can be something that you miss if you're taking lots of online classes, is that likely most of the people who are in those online classes don't live in your area. And so co-ops can be a way to fill a bit of a social gap at times, and also to take classes on interesting topics taught by people who you may not take classes from in a traditional setting. The fourth course provider type that I'd like to discuss is just private tutoring. And while a potentially expensive option can be really phenomenal if you have the means for it. Tutoring was in large part what I did for my music education. I play guitar. And so taking private lessons was a big part of my high school experience and also before high school. Tutoring can also fill a gap though if you have taken a course, but it's been a while since you've reviewed that material and you just need some help brushing up on it so that you can progress to the next course. Some subjects that I had tutoring for was, like I said, music, first of all. I also had a bit of tutoring throughout high school for math, and also in the very early stages of high school for English and writing, since writing was not a strength of mine going into high school. The fifth and final course provider that I would like to talk about is not really a provider per se, but a resource, OER, or Open Educational Resources. This was really popularized through MIT, I think, through their open courseware program. And so MIT OpenCourseWare is phenomenal, but it is not the only form of open educational resources. Pretty much any class that is self-guided and self-paced, I would consider to be an open educational resource. And these can be really great if you are a very highly self-motivated learner. In some areas I was, and in some areas I was not. And so I really struggled with open educational resources at times, but depending on the type of learner that you are, it may be a phenomenal option for you. And so it's definitely something to try. It can also be a very affordable way to learn because many open educational resources are free. My one con to OER, besides it being just a difficult medium for certain types of students like myself, is that it's hard to verify that you actually did the work. And so colleges are forced to just take your word for it, which in many cases they will. But if the majority of your transcript is OER, then that puts them in a little bit of a tough spot because they have to take your word for the majority of your transcript rather than being able to rely on a transcript from a community college or a transcript from an online course provider or recommendations from other professors or from just teachers generally. So have at it with OER, and I think it's also important to supplement those resources with other types of courses. So throughout my time in high school, I actually had a mix of everything that we've just talked about. It was dominantly community college and online, but there were also co-ops, tutoring, and OER. I think that's a really good way to put together a high school experience. The ratio of each bucket to every other bucket may vary from student to student. So for example, you may strongly favor tutoring over these other types of courses, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the beauty of a non-traditional education, is that you can customize it to fit your needs and your goals. So I hope this overview of some of the different options you have in terms of course selection helps with just thinking through how you might go about forming your high school experience academically. In the next video, I'd like to discuss how to represent all of these classes on a transcript. And so we're actually going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of what does it literally look like to put all of your high school classes onto one page and send that off to colleges. And to give just a little heads up, this is arguably the most important part of your application to colleges. So whether you're going into your freshman year or you're going into your senior year, this is something that you'll want to take note of. So until then, have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to dive into transcripts soon. Bye.